Hi everyone, and welcome to the Southerners Northern Garden. So today I'm going to be talking to you about resolving some clay soil issues that you might have in your garden and how I resolved them in this bed specifically. I know I've mentioned it several times on garden tours and other videos that this bed, I had to pull every plant out of it last June, I believe it was, after I had everything planted. I ended up losing this limelight hydrangea standard and it had to be replaced, and I almost lost several of the other plants before I got them out of here and realized there was a problem. Before I do that, I have a couple announcements. The first being, if you watched my videos last week, you know I have a visitor coming to the Southerners Northern Garden. That visitor is Jess from Roots and Refuge Farms. So as you're watching this, Jess is on her way to Southwest Ohio to come stay a few days here and visit me, and we are going to be going to all of my favorite garden centers around Southwest Ohio, as well as some other places. If you happen to see us out, say hey, but don't make it weird. If you have any recommendations of places to go, as you know, I've only been in Ohio about 5 years, so if there's a hidden gem in Cincinnati or maybe Columbus, we could go to Columbus or Dayton. Certainly point that out below, and we'll be happy to look at those and go visit those. I intend to go to Weggersund, Siebenthalers, Natorps, Burns, Delhi. There's some places in Cincinnati we'll likely go. But otherwise, I'm really excited for her to come up here and visit me. The second announcement is that a lot of you know I have dogs, and I love dogs, and I know a lot of you love your fur babies. I'm on the board of an organization called the Society for the Improvement of Conditions for Stray Animals. It's a no-kill animal shelter, and as you know, last year with COVID, we had to change some of our fundraising techniques because we had a lot of in-person events, and that just wasn't possible last year. Last year we had a really successful event, and so we're repeating it for this year, and I wanted to bring that to you in case you wanted to donate to that event. It is called the Pups Show. Each ticket is $50. I'll put the link below. But with your $50, you get a chance to win $10,000. So there are 1,528, I believe, squares set up in this outdoor area at the pet animal shelter. And they're going to let out a dog, and wherever that dog poops, if it's on your square, you win the $10,000. Taxes will be deducted. You do not have to be in Ohio to win. We just ask that you be in the United States. So if you're watching me in any state, you want to support the animals, all the money goes directly to the animals, and then get a chance at winning $10,000. Go right ahead. I would certainly appreciate it. The animals would appreciate it. And it's probably the best odds you have at winning $10,000 that you may ever get. Better than any lottery numbers you could expect. When those 1,500 chances are sold out, it's over. The event will be streamed live on Facebook. I believe it's in a couple weeks. I'll put all the details below so you can grab that information. And if you're interested, certainly go check that out. Now, over the past week, I've been working in the garden. We got the shed completely painted. I'll pop a picture up here. I put some boxwoods around the shed, I put some boxwoods around the moon gate, and I got planted the Kindred spirit oaks right here. One of the issues that I had when digging one of the holes was clay soil, and I ended up not being able to plant a tree in that hole at all. So I had to move one of the trees down on the end and scoot the hedge down just a little bit. It kind of messed up my configuration, but it's still going to look great. So I have the trees spaced 5 foot on center. And as you know, these trees get 5 to 6 foot tall and wide over their life. So it will take them a very, very long time to even form a hedge. I just wanted some nice structure right here in winter. And even though these are deciduous trees, they do provide a lot of structure in winter with those close branches. So today, how I resolved clay soil in this bed, before we get started, you can see what I pulled out of the tree hole over here. I took the long auger that I used to plant the 𝗍𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗦 arborvitae, so it's pretty good, 3 foot long at least, and sunk that entirely in the ground, and I still couldn't hit good soil enough to allow the hole to drain. So I dug the hole, it was holding water. I pulled the tree out of it because it was holding water. The next day I tried to dig these really long, deep holes, and it still held water today, so today I just gave up and moved the tree to a different location. So as you can see, this is a piece that fell off my auger. It is very, very thick clay. Water could not penetrate it, and this is what the whole hole looked like. So there was no chance that there was going to be any drainage for that tree, and I didn't want to lose it, obviously, because it was brand new, and I'm really excited about the structure that's going to provide. Now, amending a hole like that just for a single shrub is not necessarily recommended because it can cause it to hold water. One of the reasons I plant smaller shrubs in my garden is so I don't have to deal with that. The plat of land that I live on used to be part of a farm, but when they developed, they scraped all the good soil off of it. We think when they dug our basement, they may have dumped a lot of the clay next to the house, which happens frequently, and so they probably just put a little bit of topsoil on top of it, and it's just terrible for drainage. That area stays pretty moist, so I am just going to plant small things around there. The only thing I have left to plant in this bed are the little 4-inch containers and maybe some 8-inch containers. Nothing terribly big, so I won't have to dig that far in the ground into that clay. These trees were in 15-gallon containers, so the hole had to be quite large, and as a result, I just went down and hit that clay, and they just became a bucket and holding water for that one tree. But otherwise, they look great. We're supposed to have a very bad storm tonight. I'm hoping they'll be fine, some high winds. So I just hope there's no issues with that. As far as this bed, in March of 2020, when COVID hit, I was panicking because the garden centers didn't know if they were going to be able to open. So I ordered a lot of shrubs from 𝗍𝗓𝗓𝗧 and picked them up. These limelight hydrangea standards were actually planted, not this one specifically, but the original ones were planted in January of 2020. We had a really odd season that winter, and it was about 70 degrees, 60, 70 degrees around January 10th that year. So I stuck a standard limelight hydrangea in the ground over here on both sides in January, and then the winter continued to cool and it settled in for spring. Well, little did I know that since the patio had just been put in, a lot of this soil had been compressed really bad. And so in March, after I got my shrubs from 𝗍𝗓𝗓𝗧, the rest of the bobo hydrangeas and the emerald green arborvitae, I put those in the ground in March. It would have been late March, early April. And from there, I put them on drip and started watering them. And June rolled around and I noticed that the limelight hydrangea standard that I had here started yellowing and drooping, which was really odd. I was giving it sufficient water, but little did I know that it was just basically sitting in water because I had already heavily mulched the area so I couldn't see. So when I pulled up the tree, it hadn't rained in days, I hadn't been providing any more drip, and it was just sitting in a bucket of water. So I immediately removed the tree. It happened to be too late for it. I ended up losing it and having to replace it. But I was able to save all the other ones because I noticed they were doing the same thing. When I pulled all of the shrubs out of the ground, you get that really stinky sewage smell from that old clay that was just decaying the roots. You could tell that's what was happening. So everything in this bed came out. I let it sit for a little while, maybe a few weeks, just to kind of dry out some without any water. And then I tilled in the mulch that I had here just to add some organic matter to this soil. I have a rototiller, and it was just, I went as deep as it was able to go. Along with that, after I tilled in the mulch, I added 2 bags of perlite, 2 50-pound bags. So this is a lot of perlite in this area. I added some leftover vermiculite, at least 1 bag I had of vermiculite, some alfalfa meal, which is a great thing to add to soil to give it some nitrogen as well as introduce some organic matter. And I also added, I don't know how many bags of mushroom compost, but a very, very good amount of mushroom compost to this area. And then I let it sit for probably another month, unplanted, for some of that stuff to kind of break down and work into the soil. Now the soil is amazing. It's almost like potting soil. It could be potentially too free draining, but I do have some clay soil issues directly behind me because I didn't get in that area specifically because I wasn't intending to plant there. So water tends to run off rather than soak into the ground there. But I also have my sprinkler lines that run right under here because there's a valve behind here, and I didn't want to get too close to those and end up busting the sprinkler line, so it was very difficult to rototill in that area. But all the areas where the shrubs are sitting was rototilled very thoroughly. Additionally, something creative I kind of did that I don't necessarily recommend, but at the bottom of this hole, I ended up planting this new hydrangea standard a little high, and at the bottom of this hole, I actually put a PVC pipe and ran it down here. So if any water was to fill up in that hole, too much, it would run through the PVC pipe and kind of drain just freely into the soil below here. So ever since then, I still get kind of concerned when we're having a lot of rain, but the plants have done really well. In fact, some of the bobos have burned this year. They have only been in the ground one full year, one and a half seasons, and to have been pulled out of their planting area several months later, put back into their containers, I count them as winners, because that had to have been very stressful for them. It was stressful for me. So amending a big area like this is not easy, and it can be expensive. So the perlite I purchased 2 bags of was probably around $50. I had the vermiculite on hand because, you know, if you've watched my geranium potting video, I make my own potting mix during winter for my seed starting, and I just use whatever vermiculite I had left over. Vermiculite can be kind of inexpensive, at least at Menards locally. The perlite had to be ordered in. The mushroom compost I got from Menards as well. It wasn't necessarily cheap either. I think it was about $2 to $3 per bag. And they were tiny 1 cubic foot bags. You don't have to use mushroom compost. You could use any compost. You mostly want to incorporate some good organic matter to help break up that clay and allow the soil to drain more freely. And after that was all over, I remulched really heavily to add some additional organic matter to the soil that could work into the soil. So the plants are loving it right now. You can see this is where I trimmed back the catmint earlier a month or so ago, and it's come back into bloom. This is Pajamas catmint. I absolutely love it. I have found that the size of it is a bit sporadic. So like this one's really large, this one's kind of tiny, and then around my garden I also have that same issue. They're not consistent in their growth size. Some are bigger than others, and that's really my only complaint. But otherwise, it's a very fragrant perennial, great for the pollinators, and definitely one of the perennials I will be keeping in my garden because it is so low maintenance. And although you should trim it midsummer to keep it blooming, I found that you don't have to. I just happened to this year because we had a really hot spell, and I wanted it to rebloom nicely this fall. I have still not resolved the clay soil issue in the front, where I had to remove the hydrangea there around the Bradford pear. That hydrangea ended up not surviving. I expected it wouldn't, considering how bad it looked. So those hydrangeas are hard to find. They're Invincibelle Ruby. The company I got them from is no longer in business. And I've not seen them locally very often. So until I get that clay soil issue resolved, it may not be this year. I may have to fill the hole back up with some clay soil and plant a smaller hydrangea shrub there if I can find one, which will probably be preferable, and allow that to grow into the clay soil rather than digging a big hole and creating a bucket that will just sit in water. And that may be the route I move to. It's very hard to amend individual holes like that without amending whole sections of the bed, because you just can't dig down far enough in some instances to hit good soil. At least you can on my property, to allow that hole to become free draining. In some cases it can make it just worse, because it ends up just holding more and more water the deeper you dig that hole. So I hope this video was helpful. I'm really excited about Jess coming. Don't forget to go get a chance at winning $10,000 from the Society for the Improvement of Conditions for Animals. That donation is tax deductible. So it's a donation, but also a chance to win. There's only 1,500 available. Once they're sold, they're gone. And these are better opportunities than you might have to win $10,000 anywhere else. If you have clay soil issues of your own, experiment. Add organic matter. If you don't have a rototiller, you may have to let the bed sit for a little bit, or just dig and break up the soil, incorporate as much organic matter as you can. You can plant shrubs a little high off the ground, 1 or 2 inches, to allow soil to move more freely away from the base of the plant. In instances like these trees where you had a big root ball to start with, that's not really an option. You can plant it high, but most of that root ball is still going to be sitting in water all the time, so there's no options there. As far as the rest of my property, I still have to get all my tiny shrubs in the ground, which Jess is going to be helping me with. She's going to be helping me Marie Kondo some items while she's here, and we're just going to enjoy our time together and go visit lots of garden centers and get her started on her own ornamental stuff in her garden. Her goal is to fill her car with plants on the way back to South Carolina. So thank you guys for joining me. Don't forget to provide recommendations for us to visit this week. Remember, in a world full of hate, be a light and take care.